See, basically we have two main ways to produce ATP in the body: through ionic gradients that happen in the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, or by using the energy that is present in the high energy bonds of different substrates, which is known as the substrate level phosphorylation. In the conversion of 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate to 3-phosphoglycerate, the high energy bond between the carbon number 1 and the phosphate group is broken, and that energy is used to convert ADP into an ATP, which is an example of substrate level phosphorylation. Here you should also note that 2 ATPs are produced per molecule of glucose in this reaction, since one molecule of glucose was split into 2 earlier in glycolysis. After this, we are left with 3-phosphoglycerate, which has only one high energy phosphate group attached now. In the next 2 steps of glycolysis, the 3-phosphoglycerate gets converted to 2-phosphoglycerate and then to phosphoenol pyruvate. This phosphoenol pyruvate then loses its high energy phosphate group, which is then used to make another ATP by attaching that phosphate group to ADP. This phosphoenol pyruvate then gets converted into pyruvate. The enzyme which converts 3-phosphoglycerate to 2-phosphoglycerate is a mutase, more particularly known as the phosphoglycerate mutase. And after that, we have the enzyme enolase that acts on 2-phosphoglycerate to convert it into phosphoenol pyruvate. After this step, the enzyme pyruvate kinase acts on phosphoenol pyruvate to convert it into pyruvate. The phosphate group on the phosphoenol pyruvate is removed and used to convert an ADP to ATP. In this step also, you can note that 2 ATPs are produced, as one glucose was earlier split into 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So we are basically done with the complex part of glycolytic pathway. Now you need to know just a few more things to understand glycolysis completely. So you need to know how fructose and galactose are used in this pathway. You also need to know how this pathway is regulated, meaning how hormones and other factors can increase or decrease the rate of glycolysis in different ways. How ATP is generated from NADH, and the last thing you need to know is the fate of pyruvate. So this is the summary reaction of glycolysis. Glucose plus 2 molecules of inorganic phosphate plus 2 NADs plus 2 ADPs give 2 molecules of pyruvate, 2 molecules of NADH, 2 hydrogen ions, 2 molecules of water, and 2 ATPs. Now some of you may find this reaction easy to understand, but if you're like me and hate chemistry as much, let me decode this reaction for you. On the left hand side of this reaction is the input. You can take these things like the raw materials that we are using in glycolysis. We begin with one molecule of glucose which gets split into 2 molecules of pyruvate. That is why the prefix 2 is attached to all other substrates used in this reaction. We use 2 inorganic phosphate molecules in this pathway. They are used in the step when glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted to 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. You may be confused that only one phosphate is being used here, but please remember that we are essentially getting 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate for every 1 molecule of glucose that enters the pathway of glycolysis. 2 NADs are used in this reaction which accept hydrogen and get reduced to NADH, which is subsequently used in the electron transport chain to make more ATPs. 2 hydrogen ions are produced here in this oxidation reduction reaction. 2 ADPs are converted to make 2 ATPs. These 2 molecules of water are produced in the dehydration reaction of 2-phosphoglycerate to phosphoenol pyruvate, and this gives us the final reaction of glycolysis. Now if you look at how much energy is derived from glycolysis, you can first note that glycolysis consists of an energy expenditure phase and an energy producing phase. In the first phase we use 2 ATPs. One ATP is used here to convert glucose into glucose 6-phosphate, and the next one is used here in the conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So till now we are in a -2 balance for ATPs. In the energy generation phase, how much ATPs are produced actually depend upon whether oxygen is available or not. Let's first suppose oxygen is not available. In this case, there are only two sites of energy generation in this pathway. One site is here when 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is converted to 3-phosphoglycerate, and one site is here when phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvate. Both these are examples of substrate level phosphorylation that we discussed earlier. Now, since we started with one molecule of glucose which was split into two, the number of ATPs produced in this reaction are actually 4 ATPs per molecule of glucose. So if oxygen is not available, we use 2 ATPs here and produce 4 ATPs here. So net ATP gain is only 2 ATPs. Now what happens if oxygen is available in glycolysis? Oxygen has no direct role in this pathway of glycolysis, but has a very important role indirectly, and that is here in this reaction. Here, as you can remember, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. The enzyme making it possible is the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, which removes hydrogen from glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and attaches it to NAD to make it NADH. But the thing is that there is only a limited amount of NAD in the cell, so NADH has to be reconverted to NAD again. And this takes place in the electron transport chain present in the mitochondria of the cells. And this is exactly where oxygen plays a very important role. Electron transport chain keeps the supply of NAD in order and also produces 2.5 new ATPs in this reaction. This is an example of generation of ATPs through ionic gradients, and it is different from substrate level phosphorylation that we discussed earlier in this video. Now we are getting an additional 2 NADH molecules in aerobic glycolysis per molecule of glucose that enters the pathway. So a quick recap on the energetics of glycolysis. We are using 2 ATPs in the investment phase of glycolysis, and we are producing 4 ATPs in the payoff phase. That gives us a net gain of only 2 ATPs in the anaerobic glycolysis. In the aerobic glycolysis, we are getting an additional 2 NADH molecules that will be used in the electron transport chain to produce more energy. Okay, so this was about the energy generation in glycolysis. Now you also need to know how galactose and fructose enter this pathway. For fructose, it is simple. Most of the fructose that we consume goes into our liver and gets metabolized into fructose 1-phosphate, which through another intermediate enters the glycolysis here. Galactose is converted to glucose 1-phosphate through a series of 4 reactions. The glucose 1-phosphate is then converted into glucose 6-phosphate by a mutase, which enters the pathway of glycolysis here. Now let's understand how this pathway of glycolysis is regulated, meaning how is the rate of glycolysis increased or decreased when required. First, let's understand in brief why regulation of this pathway is required. Glycolysis is basically a type of pathway that lies in the center of many metabolic pathways like Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, nucleotide synthesis, lipid synthesis, etc. And it is also very important for the generation of energy. So as you can see that it is not a type of pathway that starts with glucose and we get the final product in the end which has no further use. Rather, it is a pathway in which different products are produced that are used elsewhere in the body. For example, glucose 6-phosphate is used to make building blocks of DNA, the nucleotides. Dihydroxyacetone phosphate is used to make glycerol, which is a very important substance for making essential lipids in our body. Pyruvate is important for production of cholesterol and fatty acids. And glycolysis is also very important for the generation of energy. So it becomes important to regulate this pathway at more than one point, which allows the regulation of several pathways to be coordinated. For example, dihydroxyacetone phosphate is used to make glycerol, which is used to synthesize important lipids and store energy. Now, when you are in a well-fed state, you have abundant energy in your body. Your pathway of glycolysis doesn't need to go till the end because you don't need more energy, but it still needs to go till dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which can be diverted to produce glycerol so that you can synthesize fat and store it for energy. Metabolic control must therefore allow glucose to be converted into dihydroxyacetone phosphate, even though the complete breakdown till pyruvate need not occur at such high rates. Now, if you go into the details, this pathway is regulated at three main points by controlling the activity of three enzymes that act on these 3 points. At the first point, we have the hexokinase, and regulation at this step is simple. If the concentration of glucose 6-phosphate rises in the cell, the enzyme hexokinase is shut off, thus serving as an overall check on this pathway. The next point is here, the conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, and the enzyme acting here was a phosphofructokinase. Now, phosphofructokinase is mainly regulated by 3 important factors: the energy content of the cell, hormones, insulin and glucagon, and the levels of citrate in the cell. We have discussed how the levels of ATP affect the function of phosphofructokinase earlier in this video. An increase in the level of ATP of the cell decreases the activity of the enzyme phosphofructokinase and thus decreasing the overall rate of glycolysis. Insulin increases this rate of reaction by increasing the activity of phosphofructokinase. Now, insulin is released when we have plenty of glucose in our blood. This glucose needs to be converted into pyruvate fast for energy production and generation of other intermediates. So insulin increases the rate of glycolysis, so excess glucose in the blood can be metabolized, and it does so by increasing the activity of the enzyme phosphofructokinase. Glucagon decreases the activity of the enzyme phosphofructokinase, thus allowing the blood glucose levels to increase. This hormonal regulation is indirectly done by means of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. Citrate is a molecule that is an intermediate in the Krebs cycle. Now, pyruvate is further fed into the Krebs cycle. So, if the concentration of citrate rises in the cell, it becomes important to decrease this entry, which is done by decreasing the activity of phosphofructokinase by high levels of citrate. The third point of regulation of glycolysis is at the last step, that is the conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate by the enzyme pyruvate kinase. So the regulation at this step is very simple. You just have to remember that if the products of this pathway, ATP and acetyl-CoA, accumulate in excessive concentration in the cell, this inhibits the pathway of glycolysis at this step. This is also just a normal negative feedback mechanism that operates in many pathways in our body. So this was the regulation of glycolysis. Now we'll come to the last topic in the video, that is what happens to pyruvate next. See, the pyruvate has mainly 3 fates. First, it can be converted into acetyl-CoA, which is further used in the Krebs cycle. This is done by the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. Second, pyruvate can be converted into oxaloacetate by the enzyme pyruvate carboxylase. Oxaloacetate can be used in the Krebs cycle or for gluconeogenesis. Thirdly, pyruvate can also be converted into ethanol by decarboxylation, but this occurs in yeast and not in humans.